All right, wonderful. Okay, and I think it is fine. All right, welcome everybody to our policy committee meeting. Rich, why don't you get us started?
Sure, thanks, Sylvia. Tonight we have on our agenda a few of our fiscal related policies, and that's why Chris is with us this evening to kind of talk with us about some of those proposed changes and some of his thoughts as our business manager. And then if we get through those, we're going to jump into our maintenance review process, starting with the 100s this evening, and we'll get as far as we can go with that. Okay, so our first policy is policy 611, purchases budgeted. So I'm going to hand it off to Chris to kind of talk us through some of the changes that are being proposed there.
So what we're recommending is that we go with the PSBA form policy, and that what is listed as guidelines really belongs in an administrative regulation, not a board policy.
Is that part of the PSBA?
No, the guidelines are not part of the PSBA
Oh,
policy.
somebody added those. I was wondering.
Well, I appreciated those being there. I think mostly around the sake of just transparency, I think is the word I came up with. I don't know, of more of an explanation of what we do, but I don't know.
It's not the hill that I'll die on. If the board prefers the guidelines in there, that's fine by me.
It's fun.
I think the thing that Dean and I talked about with Chris is in the event Chris isn't here, whenever this is reviewed again, there may be a question as to, well, why is that there, or why is it not there? And I think that was something that came up during our discussions, Chris, to just kind of have it aligned with PSBA, so there's no unknown reasoning why something is there. I think is what we did talk about. So just food for thought as you consider this.
What's the board's pleasure?
That is a good question. As I mentioned, we like to talk about everything. So I was curious as to why we were taking it out. That's hopeful. I agree with Linda in one respect that some of this is helpful, though I don't know that all of it is entirely accurate or can be entirely accurate, maybe with regard to some supplies. But for example, the board prefers to purchase within the district from established local merchants. Like, I know at least for services, and this is goods rather than services, we are often required to go through a bid process, and our local folks never, it felt a little disingenuous there, because I think our hearts are there, but we can rarely do it. I'm okay removing this as long as we have a fulsome administrative policy. I think that's where I stand. The only thing I could say, Linda, is if we wanted to take and that's the only it's while the board's intent purchases budgeted.
Do we see any negatives when
No.
there isn't?
No. You guys want to keep it, it's fine by me.
Well, certainly, like number 3, some of this should be removed. So I think we should scrap it and figure out if there's anything we want to keep as opposed to the opposite. Because, for example, the requisition form, like that really does belong on an administrative policy. Like, because what if next week we decide to not go with the requisition form and move to an email or something like that? So this is oddly in the weeds and theoretical at the same time.
Yeah.
So like number 3, I think can absolutely go. If it were me, I would take the heart of the guidelines in that we want to purchase quality supplies at the lowest price, and we'll do our best to support local merchants, put it up somewhere into a sentence and be done.
Yeah, I mean, I honestly don't think, I'm not opposed to the guidelines. I just don't really think they say anything. Yeah. But I don't have a strong philosophy either way or thought either way.
Given that they're not in the TSBA, I'm gonna say I'm okay with removing them. If Karen's okay with removing them. But can we ensure, to Linda's point, that there is clarity in an administrative
That's right.
regulation?
Sure.
With respect to both procedure and our heart's desire to honor.
I already have that on the list. to do, so.
Is that okay, Linda?
Okay, the only reason that I guess I understand where you're going with it. Again, my mind is just going to the transparency piece of it. And for administrative regulations, that is not something that general
That is
people can see.
transparent,
Yeah, that's true.
So,
That's true.
Yeah.
but, okay.
So we're gonna remove the entire guideline document and then we'll send it back to the board for a first read.
Yes.
Okay, so we can move it on to a first read. All right, very good. We can do
So
that.
this hasn't been last revised. Dina, when was this last done?
It says 2026.
There wouldn't have been any other, it would have been since 2014.
Wow.
Wow.
Quick, who was the business manager in 2014?
Brenda Ray.
Who?
Brenda Ray, no.
Maybe.
It was your
Jill Rock?
Jill Rock.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
Wow.
okay,
She was good people.
yeah,
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Let's keep going.
all right. Okay, next policy, again, another financial policy here. This is board policy number 619, district audit. Chris, do you want to take us through that?
Yeah, so basically PSBA has recommended language that we're substituting for homegrown language, but I think it covers the same ground for you. And one thing to keep in mind in this policy is that the state auditor general no longer audits schools, but they have deferred that to the Pennsylvania Department of Education, who has yet to take action, but they could take action on it. So that's why it's in the policy.
Okay, so the green represents the latest PSBA language.
Yes.
Dina, did you get the sense that the pink, I mean, it says it was reviewed in 22, but the pink was probably old PSBA language, maybe customized a bit?
I would imagine.
Yeah.
Agreed. Because really they're just replacing those two paragraphs with something else. So I would assume that they had already had something there.
So, sorry, here I go again. So the second paragraph under the authority one, I appreciate stating the fact that we recognize our obligation as an elected body to represent the interests of all constituents. That is not put in that second replacement paragraph. And I think that that is a significant piece in recognizing our obligations. So I'd like to see that said.
I
Fine by
wonder
me.
if that's in the 0s though.
Yeah,
That sentence covers
This is
everything.
district audit.
Yeah.
That would be my, I agree with, I'm sorry, Linda, I'm gonna take an issue with you today, but, I agree with the sentiment. I think it's an absolutely important sentence. I'm not sure it relates to the district audit. I think it relates, I mean, it's in part to the audit, but more, I think that relates more to our job as director. So I would see that more as the obligation of the board somewhere. Now, again, I'm not dying on this hill either.
They do
Yeah, I was
have the
gonna say-
right. I mean, they can for
No,
sure.
the access, the copies have to stay in
Yeah,
there.
that-
Yeah.
that
It's just
piece
that
of
first
it.
sentence.
Yeah, it's just
that
that first
piece.
sentence
Yeah.
that just stating, and see, to me, though, I understand what you're saying, it's covered in another area. I don't see any harm in just restating it in this area as well. I don't know.
I certainly don't see harm in it either. So,
That's fine, we'll leave it.
So we
So
have
with-
that first sentence and then go into the
Yeah,
board recognizes.
exactly.
And then,
reports. Okay.
yeah.
so can we keep that first sentence, Dina? And then instead of the therefore, then it goes to Chris's green?
Yep.
Look at that for compromise. If only we were in the federal Congress. That's,
Is that the only change?
yeah, the remainder looks like stuff we have to do that I am not hoping to change.
We'll make that change and move it for a first read.
I
Okay.
think so. Linda, you didn't have questions?
I
on that?
do not have anything else.
Policy 626. Federal fiscal compliance. And I know there's a number of things going on here that Chris probably wants to walk you through.
Okay. So the status quo or current policy that the board has, the attachments to 626 that PSBA has are all separate policies that the board has. We are recommending that you align with PSBA and have one policy 626 with attachments instead of separate policies for each.
I
This-
see.
So all of those individual things that were on that. So how many of them are there? Because there were some that were either mentioned but not noted as retired, or they weren't mentioned or remained, or like I was confused.
I believe there's 6 attachments that go with 626.
So
So
there's
those,
I think there's 5.
six attached.
I'm counting 5.
Okay.
I count 5.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's 5.
Okay, so
And then it looks like, Linda, to your kind of question, and then there's 626.1, 626.2, 626.3, 626.4, 626.5. And if I understand Chris correctly, those are really the attachments that we made into specific policies rather than keeping them as attachments to 626. Is that right, Chris?
That's correct.
okay, but wasn't one of them, and I believe it was the
Yeah.
travel one,
I-
mentioned to do a 626.1?
that's correct. And I just, as I'm sitting here, I'm realizing that I didn't include that in the agenda and I was supposed to. So 626.1, PSBA's number, is our 626.5. So we would have to
So we
renumber.
just renumber
Yeah,
that.
And that would still fall as a separate policy, which makes sense for
Correct.
travel.
correct.
And everything else is the attachment. I don't have a dog in this fight, to be honest. I think whatever keeps us in compliance, and is the easiest to keep up to date with our requirements in this regard. I mean, that's kind of where I'm coming from.
All right, so the subrecipient monitoring, the obligations for property, the conflict of interest. There's gotta be 2 more. What were the other 2?
Subrecipient monitoring,
Procurement.
cost obligations, attached cost.
If you look up at the screen, you'll see
There.
the
There you go.
5 attachments.
The procurement and the allowability.
Yeah.
Okay, procurement. And the allowability.
Conflict of interest is baked into the PSBA 626.
Okay, so that makes the 5 that are gonna be moved to attachment. And then the travel one remains the 626.1.
Correct, 626.1, okay.
And I
Okay,
think what happened here, anybody who's been in policy for a while, we pulled all the attachments out of all the policies and didn't have any attachments. And I think at that point, Drew created policies for all of them. And then now it's getting to be that it's hard to keep up with PSBA's recommendations when they're all separate policies.
Okay.
And when they update a form, we don't want to miss it because we don't have the attachments. You know, if there's some legal reason they're updating a form, they give it to us.
Yeah, and I think this is deep in the weeds
Yeah.
regulation, so I don't know that we're gonna fuss too much of the language here, so it's really just keeping in compliance with everything we have to say.
Chris, do you want to talk a little bit about the check marks you recommended? There's a couple areas within the policy, as you
Yeah.
might have noticed, where Chris has recommended some check marks for the committee to move forward with. I don't know if you want to touch on
Sure,
that.
let's just look at 626, for
Yeah.
instance. The federal programs coordinator is the district point of contact for federal programs and funding.
I didn't even know we had one of those. Who is that?
So it's Marie Colley. She doubles as our
it's
elementary
Marie.
principal.
Okay.
And then
Another one is the weekend.
I guess I'm usually.
There's
scrolling.
I didn't realize there's a
Page
title. level.
four.
Yeah, that's how- Quite literally, the time.
Yeah.
page 4 has another selection. Sorry, I'm scrolling too slow.
It's up on the screen.
The written notification of rights and protections under whistleblower laws, both in the employee handbook and on the district website. That's why we made those selections.
As long as that's accurate, that's good for me.
On subrecipient monitoring. For instance, we'll take a look at subrecipient monitoring. Let's see. District must case basis whether an entity receiving funds from the district as part of a federal program serves in the role of a subrecipient or contractor. That's really a superintendent decision.
Is that in one of the,
That's in 626 subrecipient monitoring. And then the fraud risk and risk of noncompliance with law, that's business manager duties.
no idea if I'm following the right one or not.
And then at the end, we have audit reports, policies and procedures, and as specified in legal agreement or contract as the selections. Delegation of responsibility on monitoring, it's a federal programs coordinator duty.
Are these in the attachments or the actual?
Any attachments.
Yeah.
I'm on the subrecipient
Okay.
monitoring. Just to give you a, for instance, flavor of the choices we made. Corrective action plan. We thought 60 days was appropriate.
Yeah, that's the very last page.
And then record retention, that's federal program coordinator's business. Do you want me to walk you through all the attachments or?
No, I mean, these check marks are so deep in the weeds that I think as long as you guys have reviewed them and it matches our policy and our practice, I am not gonna fuss whether it's 60 days or as soon as possible. I think that's,
Can I ask you, does all of this fall under Marie or is this shared responsibility?
Shared responsibility,
for sure.
some of it's superintendent, some of it's business manager, some of it's Maureen.
Okay.
It's not all Maureen.
So Dana, would these need to be discontinued? Is that the
I
motion
think
that we
they would be
have?
retired.
Retired, yeah.
Yeah,
I was trying to think of that.
yeah, we would retire them. That would be a motion.
I can explain that.
And then renumber travel reimbursement to
Right.
6.1.
If we can look over that one too today, just so
Yeah, let's do it right now.
Do you want to pull it up?
I have it up now.
Before we do, so really all of this is based on the very small amount of federal funds that we get
Correct.
for the title.
Correct.
That's
Okay.
correct.
All right, thank you.
Can you, that's the travel
This is the
reimbursement.
travel reimbursement. I apologize.
No worries.
While you're looking for the other one, oh, you do have it? Okay.
Mhm.
I was curious, do we have any people that we contract with that comes out of the federal program, or are they all staff? I wasn't sure if special education fell into that or if that has its own category.
I would say, that we do contract with the Bucks County Intermediate Unit for part of
Okay,
our federal programs for title services. So,
okay,
we do need to do a set aside for our homeless students, and we also need to provide services to our students in non-public schools. So for those, we contract, with value
So if a,
and professional development value as well. Yeah,
so if a student is going to a non-public school, we
Yes.
still have to provide that?
that's correct.
Yes, we do. I didn't know that.
Yeah,
Interesting. Okay.
and all of that though is pertaining to anyone that needs services for the, whatever the title program is that
That's
we're,
correct,
yeah, okay.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, travel. Let's start at the top again.
So as you scroll down, the validity of payments for travel costs.
This
that's
is
the
travel
business-
federal program. Yeah, okay, okay.
That's
Yep,
business
okay.
manager duties. Keep scrolling. In terms of determining the rate, that's a board duty.
Mileage reimbursement rates, okay. Do we do that on an annual basis or?
I'll just use the IRS. I
Yeah,
don't,
yeah,
we don't
that's
take
what everybody
emotions,
does,
so
yeah.
I'm not,
I think it's in your employment contracts that we use the IRS rate. That's how the board speaks to it.
Yeah, yeah, okay. Which makes sense. Yeah, I mean, nothing in here seems particularly out of whack. I assume that this is the PSBA language, yeah, PSBA revision 625.
So the board is X there. What is the board responsible for? Everything on the 3 paragraphs above?
The rate of mileage reimbursement.
It's written into your employment contracts that we follow the IRS. So.
whatever the-
negotiate
Whatever the
Yeah.
IRS sets one
Whatever,
every year.
whatever the IRS sets, we follow.
Okay.
Okay. Well, I think we can move this along as well. Thank you.
Okay.
So we'll retire point 1, point 2, point 3, point 4. We'll renumber point 5 to point 1. And we'll bring forward the changes to 626 as listed here in this document.
Yep.
Okay,
Wonderful.
got a lot of moving pieces there.
And that's all the changes in the 600s?
No, that was just things that came up from PSBA. Yeah.
you're so.
I know,
That was really wishful.
You were so
thinking there.
excited.
I like to cross things off
But
lists.
all the 600s that are on our agenda tonight, we've completed.
Yeah.
So
We'll
small
take it.
wins.
We'll take that. All right.
So if everybody's feeling good, we can move on to just
Yeah, please,
the
let's do
review
maintenance review.
of the 100s, which it's been a while. Yeah. So the first one is mission statement.
Follow your packet, Rich, because we have a few
Oh,
that,
I'm
we have
sorry.
that's okay. We have a few that, we'll be looking at, because they are, Title IX, so that stuff will just pass by. We have some that we've looked at in the last 3 years, so we'll pass them by.
Thank you, Chris.
As you can see, like my blue is what's coming up, but not tonight. Green is what's already been done, and red is what we really need to cover in the.
All right, ladies. Let's make this happen.
So remember, we jumped over.
We got a half an hour.
Okay, 109, I'm sorry, resource materials.
the question is forming. It just hasn't. Dina, we're confident there's no PBJ.
Not on,
I'm hungry too.
not that I'm aware
Okay,
of.
you're not aware, nothing.
I'm not,
Okay,
if there was, then I left it out of this.
I ask only because every time I see definitions like this that don't look like they've been tidied up for the electronic world, I get a little grumpy at the PSBA.
It's interesting, like with the definition piece, I was reading it as well. I'm like, boy, this is a little bit
Oh,
dated,
yeah.
but I think they capture it. What do you think?
They-
It says, and all other materials made available to students.
They just squeaked by,
Yeah.
but at least microfiche wasn't in there, so I'm feeling okay.
So I guess I'm just curious in that section, under the authority and definition, I'm not exactly sure where it would fall. How do we handle what is age appropriate? Do we have some kind of, measure, standard questions, something like that? How do we handle that?
I would say through our curriculum review, and we work with our media specialists / librarians for the collection.
I was thinking the same thing, like through, this is really a big lift for that curriculum review process.
Yeah, and appropriate, sorry, Linda, I just haven't finished. Oh, okay. Because I think appropriateness is built in here too.
Because this covers library materials.
It does.
too. Yeah.
Yeah, 8C you're referencing,
yeah,
yeah,
correct.
yeah.
Well, it says we shall provide it, but it doesn't say that we're responsible for it, does it?
I'm sorry, Bart, I'm gonna. I'll be right back. Sylvia's checking out her.
I think that goes to your question.
Or would you mind repeating your question now that I'm more separated than what I'm reading?
Well, to go along with what Linda was saying, I mean, it says the board shall provide, and then down, but somebody, it looks to me, the way that I'm seeing this, the board is we're providing it, but somebody else is responsible to make sure that it's appropriate.
The
And who would-
selection procedures shall be developed that
Yeah,
the materials are blah, 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 appropriate.
right.
Right, I don't think the board should be in the business of determining whether something
Correct.
is appropriate, yeah.
Well, yes and no. I mean, I'm not well, some of it may be the level of, comprehension and that kind of stuff. I'm not necessarily looking at that piece of it as much as I am, maybe the moral aspect of whether we should be providing books in the library that are inappropriate with sexual content in them.
Age appropriate.
Correct.
I would assume, though, that's part of the guidelines around appropriateness, right?
Well, but that's why I was curious what the standard is and how that is determined. Only because I have seen some of the titles for the books that are in the library that I do not believe should be in the library. So I'd just like to know how is that determined?
Just as I said before, through the curriculum review process, and then our library media specialists are the ones that would make those determinations based on their background and training in this area.
And there's a lot of, their associations make recommendations for the books that libraries should consider purchasing for student use.
Correct. And I
Some of the-
disagree with some of those on that list.
Some of those are dependent
So,
upon, needs of classes. For example, with the cultural diversity class, students might be, researching a particular topic, and students might ask, hey, there's not many books here on this topic. Can we get it? Obviously, we can loan those to the Bucks County IU library system, but that's how it's done from what I know, is there's a list. That list is reviewed, books are selected based upon, student needs and interests, as well as teachers to support the curriculum and instruction in the classes.
and there is a challenge procedure, which I can't
Yeah,
imagine
well-
many people use, but it's
Well-
been in here for years and
It
years.
has been.
And I think to challenge you a little bit, Linda, and I'm not challenging that you might find a book inappropriate. That's your discretion. But I think there is a baseline here. So you're not necessarily, we call it, like in law, we'll say that you're not necessarily, the reasonable person is not you. It's a broad cross section, right? So, you might be to the left. Let's switch that because that's not right. You might be to the right. I might be to the, but we're looking for that sort of cozy middle of where, I think professionally people feel comfortable that meets, a large segment of the population. To me, that's why there's a challenge procedure. That's why.
Okay, so we'll move on to that one.
Number 6, I think, captures a lot of what you just said there, Sylvia. Number 6, under guidelines.
Okay, so let me just finish that one. Okay, so you say 6. Selected will include multiple points of view. Historical issues. Okay, yeah, see that tells me that's what the materials that are in the library will do. So my question comes in number 7, where again, it's back to more of who's making that decision. So number 7, do we currently have community members who are reviewing the materials that we have available? And if we do, I would like to know what is the process to be included in that. Because though you're saying, the cross section and finding a place where, most people are comfortable, I'm just curious, how are we gauging whether most people are comfortable with that?
I think we have to trust our trained practitioners and then rely on the complaint procedure. If there is a problem, there is an opportunity for things to bubble up in the appropriate, in
So,
the appropriate ways.
so I'm sure I saw the complaint process, but let's just go over that then. Because I'd be curious about that as well. So I've got a note on number 4, but I don't know
The reconsideration of
the
materials.
reconsideration. That's the,
process,
yeah.
yeah.
Okay, so on number 4, the material review committee includes a board member. Do we do this?
So if we have not had material.
We've
challenge-
not had, okay.
Correct.
Well, that's my other question. Have we had this in the past? Okay, so to your knowledge, we've never, ever had this
I can't think
brought
of,
up?
I can't think of one that has gone through.
I think the closest we came, a parent was upset with a book in a particular building. But the parent didn't want it removed. They just didn't want their child to access it. So we just talked with the principal of that particular building. We said, student such and such cannot check this book out, but the parent is okay with it being there for other kids. That, that
That's
was
the
a couple
last
of years
I can
ago.
remember.
That's the last I remember.
Yeah.
See, so that's interesting because the instance that I'm aware of, the parent was told, we will not remove it, but we will put it where it's not accessible unless the student asks for it. So I have no idea if it's the same situation or if it's a different situation. So
don't know
I
what
guess
you're
I'm just curious if that went through this process
saying.
then.
No, I'm
And,
saying that it was not.
right. Okay. So, okay. All right.
I certainly don't recall anything.
Well, under number 7 on removal of materials, that paragraph, a complete review of library materials shall be accomplished every 5 years.
Yeah, our librarians do that.
Do that.
I know Karen's quite proud of the work that she does, rightfully so, in her review of the collection, what needs to be removed from the collection. She analyzes student data on what's been checked out, what's happening in the curriculum and where she needs to add to it. Like, she's the one that I see most often,
Yeah.
so they absolutely do go through, that process for sure.
What says data gained from this analysis should be used in curriculum reviews? What does that?
So I would say if there's a topic that's going to be discussed, Rich just talked about cultural diversity, for example.
Right.
If they're finding that they need a set of 5 books because they're going to be reading about some topic, and there's going to be like a small group that's reading a certain book on that topic. That's where the curriculum and what we have in the library comes together.
Yep.
So if the library is lacking, now what we're finding more so too, our curriculum renewals, they come with so many books, for depending on what it may be, but that's where our library will supplement the curriculum to support, whatever the topic is. I think just because Richard mentioned cultural diversity,
Yeah.
it's a good one,
That's one that pops up in my head where,
right?
we get books because kids' interest in what's relevant in current changes.
Yeah, and I could see even like our science curriculum with the farm to table,
Sure.
that's a new course, a new elective in the science
Yeah.
curriculum, so I can see that there may be materials that are needed to support that elective, for example. So there's not a farm to table curriculum per se, it's the one that the teachers putting together and may need some items.
Do you utilize the Bucks County Library System or just the IE?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, you do?
yep.
Okay.
Yeah, Karen. Yeah, we get deliveries. I think there's electronic access kids have too.
That's what I was gonna say.
Yeah.
Are they using like a cloud library and the other?
Yeah, we, not to bird walk, but it's all kind of connected. Like every fall we send out when the Bucks County is doing their countywide library drive to get membership. We send out.
Yeah.
And there's the Reading Olympics system. I think it's a little less defined up at the high school, but Reading Olympics gives such a wonderful collection of, I don't know, it's 40, 50 books that I know becomes the focus for the kids that year. So it's really helpful as a parent, to come up with fresh ideas. Yeah.
And keep in mind that electronic resources are so robust that there's a lot of that used too through like EBSCO host. Like our debate team, those kids were doing research on the death penalty, like for and against it, because they didn't know where they were going to have to argue. So they're doing research with books in our system and books electronically that they can access through databases. It's a lot. It's not the day and age when we would go to the library when we were all in college and be in the stacks looking through journal articles and those kind of things.
Different world.
Yes.
Yeah, and I will say, I think, like you said, through the curriculum process,
Yeah.
like we see a lot. I think the library piece is tougher. I do, and I hate the topic of banning books or anything like that. I hate that. But I will say the American Library Association, they've got some books on their list that I don't think should be in libraries. And so it is a hard situation to go through. So I will just say that, and I just want us to be cautious about that. But like you said, we do have a process where people can say, if they don't like something, then they can go through that process.
Which should, if they read the book and come to us, I've never had a parent read a book and come to me. And I will say too, look, the past couple years, more than that, probably since COVID, public schools have been under the spotlight in this
Yeah,
area.
Absolutely.
And there's no shortage of people trying to look for books that were inappropriate in our library. And I have yet to receive some, this is in there, you know. So it's not like people haven't been kicking the tires in terms of looking for things. I haven't heard of anybody, I mean, maybe you know something that I don't, but no one's come to me since I've been on the board. Given the amount of focus that the Moms for Liberty and others have been putting out in terms of what's in your library, you know, things like that, I still haven't seen anything that's come forward that Palisades has done. So I don't know if that's reassuring, but there certainly has been attention and focus here from folks that were, you know, concerned. And nothing's come of it.
My daughter taught at Elizabethtown School District, and the board, they have this really, really conservative, crazy conservative, more conservative than me, board, and they made the teachers go through every library book. They had, and my daughter, she was livid. And she was just it was a huge task going through all the library books to make sure that they met the criteria, didn't go beyond whatever. So, she asks me, "You're not doing that, are you?"
Good for her. Yeah. And honestly, at this point, I just want to encourage kids to get to the library and check out books.
Yeah.
I mean, I think if we have a problem, I'm not saying that there's not something in it that you'd find inappropriate somewhere on stack 4, you know, in the corner. But I think the bigger problem is getting kids to read and in the library, which is probably a better focus of our time and attention, because I'd love to have them and the parents all read it all together.
I think back to the days when I was in elementary school, and like you were saying, the book on the side. So the book that was on the side that you had to have parental permission to read was Are You There, God?
Yeah.
And guess what book everybody read? All you had to do was say you can't read it. And everybody was like, I'm reading it. So, but nevertheless, I do think, like I said, the American Library Association has some things on there that I think shouldn't be. But again, I don't know if they're in our libraries. I think you have a better sense of that. Maybe.
I've seen some things that I think are inappropriate, but, I have to go back and look. I do not remember now any titles. I couldn't tell you any of that. But I do remember doing a search and not being happy with some of the things that were there. So, but I was not aware of the process until, I don't know, maybe a year ago or whatever. But again, I only have so much time, so I've not gone back to relook at what those things are. So I may do that at some point, and if there are any in question, am I permitted to go through the process of making a complaint?
The policy.
I mean, okay, so we'll see. But
I'm gonna tell you, I just finished listening to Michael Connelly's latest Lincoln Lawyer book. Oh my gosh, it is so compelling. It should be in your library. It should be in the senior library. It is so, it's all on
Linda, read it
AI.
first. If Linda says it's okay.
It's on artificial intelligence, and it is, oh my gosh,
I have heard of that.
really, really good.
I will say, when I read this, there are a couple of educational topics that drive me crazy when we still talk about them. So number 4, that talks about materials will guide student interest, learning styles. Learning styles makes me crazy because it's been debunked. There aren't learning styles. So I always, when I see that come up, it's like, oh my gosh. So, but we don't, I'll be okay with
where
it.
is this?
Number 4 at the top, guidelines. Yeah.
Somewhere in here.
Yeah, number 4.
Learning styles.
I'll
You
be
say
okay.
there's not learning
There's
styles?
not, it's been debunked by a ton of
What do
research.
they call it?
It's just kids learn in different ways with different situations. So in other words, it used to be that people were visual learners, and now sometimes you're a visual learner, sometimes you're auditory, depends what the situation is, depends what the content is.
But isn't that the style?
But they're saying, they used to say that you are one style,
Yeah. Oh, okay.
but yeah, anyway.
Oh,
We can have that
Interesting.
one revision.
No. I'll live with it.
what is the current term for that?
It isn't, it's just been debunked.
Oh.
So people still talk about it.
Oh,
It'll be back.
Yeah. That's
right,
probably
Laura.
true. Somebody
more
else
year.
will do, yeah, that's
It's
right.
kinda
Put it
like-
in there as an homage to
Kind
Karen.
of like butter's gonna kill you, eat margarine.
That's
Margarine's gonna kill
right,
you, eat
that's
butter,
right.
you know, like.
Coffee, no coffee.
Honest
Drink
to us,
coffee, no
wasn't,
coffee.
it wasn't that long ago that we were
It
talking.
wasn't
about
that long, all the
It
time,
wasn't?
yes,
Yeah.
all the time, right? The VAKT.
Yeah.
Okay, are we marking this one as
Interesting.
reviewed? Everybody okay marking this reviewed? Please say the
Yeah.
majority.
Perfect.
Aaron, you're okay?
Oh, yeah,
Okay,
Right.
all right, 1 to 10.
Okay. I think we have time to, what time do you need to stop tonight?
We have another 10 minutes at
You have
least.
10 minutes over?
Let's
All right.
keep running.
Instructional supplies, 110.
This goes along with a fiscal meeting of Monday.
I have something to say about that. I got quite the texts about that. Uh, Yeah, out of policy, but sure. When students prepare useful items they are permitted to keep, they shall pay the district the cost of the materials used.
What does that mean?
Yeah, what
I
does
was
that
just
mean?
gonna say.
Like a clay, if they make a clay pot, they've got to pay for the clay pot.
So but isn't there for like AP Studio Art,
Right,
aren't there? Isn't there
supplies that you would think, yeah.
like
Some-
specialized supplies that students may need? So if they're creating something using, I mean, that to me would be,
So I'm not 100% sure, Dr. O'Connell. There's no doubt that the higher level drawing and painting kids have some of their own supplies
right,
because of their high level of interest. And
Correct.
I don't know that that's entirely 100% of all the things they use are their own. I just don't think that's a real statement.
Yeah, I hate to, because, but I'm personally allergic to the word shall.
That's what I was just gonna say. Well, it
they
says
may be-
shall, that it-
Be required to pay the district.
Maybe rather than shall. So
Yeah, may be required. That way it gives us wiggle room, but we're not getting kindergartners to
and
pay
even-
for soap bubbles.
I'm trying to think of other examples of where that would even, I mean,
I was thinking home ec, do they make things in home ec, like?
Yeah, and we
Do
do
they
buy
still
the,
do
we do
that,
buy the
like
fabric.
patterns
Well,
and things
I mean,
like
that's
that?
5 years ago. but-
yeah,
Do they have them now?
Yeah,
Yeah,
like
yeah,
consumer finance,
sure.
yeah.
You know, I think the biggest one here at the high school would probably be your clay. You know, when the kids make a teapot in design and sculpture 1, they don't pay for the clay.
Well, wouldn't it be that anything that they are required to make, they shouldn't have to pay for? I mean, if they're doing it for extracurricular, extra credit, or doing it for fun things or whatever, but
I
if
think you're
they're,
right with family consumer science, and I just haven't.
I know that I bought the fabric.
I think they
I
do
mean, that was
sewing and stuff in
4 or
6th
5
grade,
years
I
ago,
think.
but
I don't think that's changed.
so we
Like
brought,
doing
they
your
were
own-
required to bring a little
Makes
baggie of fabric, but, and I had so much that I made baggies for 5 or 6 kids, because we just had the,
Mhm.
I didn't want these, but that's why the maybe, that way we can where it's egregious and it just gives us wiggle room.
Okay.
So
Yeah,
with
it's just really quite.
It really is.
Weird, but
with that one change, I guess we need to bring it back for a first read then.
yeah, I'm afraid we do.
Okay. All right. Policy 111, lesson plans.
All right, Karen.
Yeah. Is that true? But they have to be prepared one
a week ahead of time?
Is that true? I think we certainly try to make sure that's the case, in all cases, in the event they're out, and to have a sub come in there, and I mean, that is what is shared,
One week is reason.
yeah.
Do inspect everyone. Says
If
shall
there's,
be
if
inspected.
there's a, if there's a problem with a particular teacher where things are not getting done, then we will, but do the observation, drop-in process.
Yeah, it says lesson plan shall be inspected.
Yes, it says.
I
Maybe
think
we
that's
should-
like an old school thing.
It must be, yeah, I think so too.
Maybe we should say maybe inspected.
It's probably a better,
More accurate.
it's-
Than the word.
it's- yeah, I think that's a better alignment to what the practice is.
Yeah, if you're not inspecting everyone, I mean, this
No.
looks like you inspect every lesson plan.
Or guidelines, lesson plans maybe they're on master sheets. Or.
Yeah, 2014.
Yeah, that's
So
right,
probably were
master
master
sheets, yeah, maybe.
It went through a 2020.
Should we say maybe reviewed rather than inspected?
Yeah,
Yeah.
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 It just doesn't feel right there. Maybe reviewed.
Master sheets.
I know, that cracks me up.
I mean, I don't even know, really.
So this is, I don't want to muddy the waters here, but I'm going to throw it out there because you know, 2020 was the last time this was reviewed. And, you know, I think about now with our learning management systems, Canvas 6 through 12, right? Canvas 6 through 12, teachers, when they know they're going to be out,
Put aside.
they will post the assignment in there for the kids. That would really, you know, I don't know if we want to say something like that in here. Lesson plans must be available for immediate access by assigned substitute teacher. In some cases, substitute teachers monitor kids because the lesson plan is in the activities for the day.
So they're just there to facilitate the,
Well, to make sure everybody's
yeah.
on task. Yeah.
To your point, Rich, I don't think there's any harm in pulling this one and just giving you guys, you, Michael, just
Take a
to
look at it.
dig in a
That's a good
little
idea.
bit.
Yeah.
And Dina, would you mind just making sure the PSBA didn't sneak a new one in here, retract some of these? That has happened once before, that the policy went away and we didn't realize it because it just quietly disappeared.
Yeah.
I don't think this one, I was thinking the last one as opposed to
If they're
this
still
one. but-
monitoring this one or not. Is that what you mean?
Yeah.
Or maintain?
But I think this is a good opportunity to have you guys just refresh.
Definitely some of the language is dated.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's not, and it was reviewed.
Yeah.
You
Good
know,
opportunity to look
yeah,
at your
no,
AL.
seriously, 5.5 years ago, it was reviewed. Things have changed a lot.
Can I just have a question back on the other one, the 110 for the instruction? I'm so sorry. The last part that says about, the administrative regulations to ensure no students denied participation in the educational program for financial reasons. That does not include extracurricular, the extracurricular piece, right?
It's interesting that you say that because as I read that, given some of the discussions we had on Monday, that did pop in my head.
Where are we looking?
Back to the other time.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I
Yeah,
went back to
under
policy
the
110.
delegation of responsibility.
Okay. The last
When we were
piece.
having
For financial
discussions
reasons.
About the people paying.
Yeah, though I interpreted this to mean for financial hardship, which we certainly have.
Yeah.
Okay.
And you do send that information out.
Yeah, and yes, if there's a financial hardship.
Yeah.
The district will waive and or cover.
We have processes in place for that.
Yes, yes. And then like I'm thinking AP advanced placement
Yeah.
tests, the
Right.
college board, like we don't,
Reduced rates.
yeah, they have a process for students who have an economic need that we can't change, but we can facilitate that.
So if I may ask then, so the wording of educational program includes a multitude of things or a number of things is what we're saying.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
111 is going back with you guys. All right. Why don't, since the board isn't here, can we try 112?
Sure, did like a really long policy, so let's give it a whirl. 112, guidance counseling.
Is there anywhere in here that talks about a ratio?
A ratio? No.
Does the state require,
They do not set a ratio.
but the state doesn't require, they don't have any ratios set up for,
The state, no, the state doesn't designate. There are professional organizations that will give recommendations.
Give
for
recommendations,
ratios,
but not
Yeah, and I
requirements.
feel like there may have been some bill or conversation a couple years ago, as far as what ratios could be, but I remember seeing that, and it was probably around COVID, but, that there would need to be funding behind that, because if you're reducing the ratios and you're adding staff.
there would have to be, yeah.
That
Another
would be
unfunded
across the
mandate.
entire state, yeah.
Yeah.
So, but we have counselors at every building.
Doctor, to your point, to Cora's question, I think the only place that I've ever seen like ratios is out of the counselors association. I'm
Yeah,
sure
that's the
they-
one
I'm
that-
sure-
sure.
Yeah, I'm sure they come up with ratios for elementary, middle, high school.
Right.
Yeah,
I think the one here that is a standard that I do not think that we're able to meet is number 7, which is be available equally to all students.
That would be a little hard.
That would be hard.
Do we want to change that?
Well, I'm interested and maybe would want to take a look at those references to policy 103 and
Non-discrim, I think.
yeah, those, yeah,
Those are the title.
those are the top 9 ones that we're gonna be working on.
Then you know what we are? We are available equally to all students, and we always have been.
Well,
Thank you.
to me, all that states is that you will be available no matter, like, you'll make yourself available to the best of your ability
All students.
to
just
anyone
feel like
that asks.
100
You know, it's
kids
not
show
that
up
you're, right,
one
it's not
time.
that you're able to split yourself over
That
all
you
of
actually
them.
provide,
Yeah,
but that there's opportunity.
yeah, exactly,
I agree with that.
yeah.
I'm comfortable with that language. No, I think 103 is so I'm okay. As long as we're not discriminating and saying certain classes of people can't get services, which we obviously
Yeah,
do not.
yeah, right.
So I am
I
comfortable
read that
with
as 50 kids show up. in
Right.
the chancellor's office at one time.
You have to worry about the practicality. Yeah. I think we should mark this review.
Very good.
Okay. And can I ask a request? Since I'm just kind of scanning ahead here at the 100s, and I see lots of special ed coming up. Yeah, so let's figure out how to get Lou in here for the next batch.
Okay.
Okay. Because I think at least through
114.
114, right, gifted.
Mm-hmm.
And then, so the best thing the policy do, okay, let's divide and conquer here. So let's have Lou start to look at those.
Yep.
Can somebody look at CTE? This is different than I thought.
We're gonna try to tackle Title IX in April.
Okay. Your lips together.
I think he's gonna put some stuff together. so-
All right, then there's some easy 100s at the end here. Adult ed. Okay, which we might have to add a little meeting to get through these easy little baby 100s.
I mean, we can have Lou hit student services as well. We'll pick.
Yeah, there's a section of migrant students.
Yep.
And we're still working on an answer related to that with the policy we dealt with last time. The number.
I recall.
But it's like 18 or or older, when is that, you know?
Oh, yeah, he's still waiting. I'm sorry. Yeah, I
Yeah, we're
didn't include that because he's still waiting for guidance from the solicitor on that.
Yeah,
That's good.
Luke and English language learners.
Yeah,
yeah,
that would
yeah.
be great.
We're gonna do the Lucia.
Sounds great.
Today was his birthday, so.
All right.
Was a
All right,
short
thank
show
you,
today.
everybody. That is
Hey,
really
we
good.
good?
My favorite